second presentation on contemporary HR in post-COVID scenario. We have with us Ms. Vasanthi Srinivasan, Professor. Sorry for that. We have with us Ms. Vasanthi Srinivasan, Professor, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. She is a postgraduate from XLRI, Jamshedpur, and a fellow in management from IIM, Bangalore. Professor Srinivasan has many research projects to her name. She is currently also on the advisory board of National Human Resource Development Network, Bangalore chapter. So thank you, ma'am. I thereby hand over this session to you.
Thank you. Mr. Anil, are there any opening remarks that you want to make, or yeah? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sir, you are on mute.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you for sparing the time, Vasanthi ji, and coming to speak on a very, very important and relevant issue for the industry at the moment. Because, frankly speaking, all of us are very confused. With the post-COVID scenario, things have happened so fast. Of course, not the subject today that you are going to speak, and you are the expert, but as an industrialist, as an entrepreneur, what I can say is that I have never seen the situation that we are facing at the moment ever in our careers.
Correct.
The supply chain is so disturbed, and the demand is like a vengeance buying is going on there. And the gap between demand and supply is so huge that all of us are groping in the dark and not knowing exactly what steps we should take in, what should be the decision that we should take. And the market forces will decide how the situation will emerge, and it's so uncertain at the moment.
Correct.
So I think in this uncertain times, the role of HR actually becomes much more important and relevant, that at least if we cannot control the external factors, if we can, manage, control, improve the internal and our biggest raw material, which is the human source in our industry. Our industry, I would say, unlike other industries, the biggest source, biggest raw material is human source, and not the machines or the other things. They come later. They have the importance, but not as much as human resource. So I think in these uncertain times and very, very unprecedented times, actually, and we do not have a history that precedence for that. So once we do not have the precedence, I think we rely on experts like you, and it's a pleasure to welcome you, and I'm very, very keen to listen to you. Sure. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anil. Thank you so much. Really appreciate. And you're absolutely right. In fact, since the March of 2020, I think for no other constituency have I had a chance to work with as much as I have with entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs across the spectrum, from real estate all the way to new products and unicorns. So the whole spectrum I have seen in the last 20 months. And therefore, when I was preparing for this session, what was on my mind were two things. And during this 1.5 years, I had the privilege of hosting a futurist, futurist Bob Johansson. And Bob Johansson said something very, very important, which I think has just stayed with me over the last year as I have been working. He said that in times of uncertainty, we are not going to get certainty. What we should seek is some degree of clarity. Yeah, and I thought it was so profound. And I think for all my HR colleagues, compliance, legal, all the others who are here in the session today, what you need to keep looking for the next 24 months is just a degree of clarity for yourself and your organizations. That's it, because it is indeed unprecedented what we are going through, and there is never going to be certainty for at least 24 to 36 months as I see today. And this is coming from yesterday. I was doing a session for the semiconductor industry, and therefore you can imagine the kind of issues that are just burning. I mean, they're really burning issues for them. Okay. So what I thought I will do today is just a little bit of stock taking of my own experiences of having worked with entrepreneurs across a spectrum of industries which have been badly hit, which have almost closed down, all the way up to thriving entrepreneurs during the pandemic. So the whole spectrum, and what I have today are more questions, and I'm happy to share this deck with the audience, because in terms of uncertainty, asking the right question is more important than the right answer, because nobody has the right answer as the uncertainty continues. Yeah. Having said that, what does this really mean to the way we look at people management? For those of you who are on chat, I think Priyanka, could I request you periodically to just kind of pause, because in mine I can't see the chat, and therefore the audience, please put in your questions, because I think if you put in your questions, I can be absolutely authentic and give you examples of what I experience, because otherwise I am coming from what I think is important for you, but that may not really be as important. Okay. So let me just very quickly begin with some very simple ideas that I'm going to kind of focus on. So there is, I don't know what is contemporary, and I don't know what is post-COVID, because as I speak to you today, in at least 9 to 10 countries of the world, the pandemic is surfacing. So what will be the impact of what is happening in Europe? What will be the impact of what is happening in China? What will be the impact on what is happening in Brazil is anybody's guess, And therefore, in some ways, I have not begun to look at a post-COVID scenario. I am actually looking at an evolving and emerging scenario that is possibly going to be there for at least another 12 to 15 months, in some ways as a kind of, till it turns into an endemic. And we don't know right now when is the start of the endemic. Okay, I think we should be very realistic in terms of how we look at this. So, for today's session, given the nature of the audience, and since I was in the audience room till now before I came here, I get a very good sense that for this workshop, I have roughly about 60 to 70% HR, compliance, welfare, and others who are there. And then another 30% I saw were general managers, CFOs, and other functionaries. So what I did is added this slide. The rest of it has just remained the same after I saw your profile. I thought that what I will do is continuously speak of two perspectives. One is the perspective of people management as done by line managers, functional mid managers, senior managers in organizations. And then, of course, the perspective which is on for HR managers. Okay. So I want right now for you to place the COVID at the back, because one of the things that will happen is that in the way the questions are being framed today, we are only thinking on the present. And if whatever I heard Mr. Anil say in the earlier part of the conversation, if the economy trajectory of the way we are picking up is a V, indeed it is a deep V, then it's just a matter of time before we go from thinking for today to thinking for the day after. In my assessment, it is already the V for India. Okay, if not a V, at least a marginally sharp U for India, which means we have to move from a mindset of fear, of scarcity, to a mindset of abundance. And that switch in mindset to going all the way from having no production, cancellation of orders, laws of livelihoods to move to saying that we are never going to be able to meet this demand requires change here, So if you are a people manager, a line manager, all your 8 hours or 10 hours in a day is focused on what do I do today? Please set aside 15 minutes to ask, assuming orders continue to increase the next year, do I have enough managers in my organization? 15 minutes a week is sufficient. But please take that 15 minutes to ask, how do my managers set goals? How do they assign tasks? How do they review people? How do they coach? How do they mentor? How do they delegate? If you don't ask this how today, you're not going to be able to fix problems tomorrow when you need to. For those of you from HR, okay, right now I know where your focus is. It is about ensuring safety, compliance. It's about ensuring that masks are worn, socially distanced. It is about ensuring productivity, efficiency. I'm sure a lot of your employees haven't come back to you the way you wanted them to, high attrition. This is your mind preoccupation today, okay? But the question also there to ask is this situation going to continue forever? No. We know from the other pandemics that have happened that once the pandemic is over and the recovery begins to happen, many organizations have not thought that far. Okay? So some of the questions that you should be asking as HR is, what of your policies and practices that you wanted to get rid of and shed all these years? Why are you not doing it now? All the training and development, oh, our employees are like this, if only we could get better quality of people, if only we could do better things, all that you've been talking about all these years, now is the chance to do it. Now is the chance to do it, right? Because there is still the continued fear in the minds of the people. How do you think long term when everybody is thinking short term? That's the capability of leadership. Yeah. So that's another piece that I want you to look at. And last but not the least, as HR managers in the future, and I have a couple of slides for you at the last, so I'd love to kind of present that. As HR managers, I don't think in the long run, in the next 3 years, you're going to be needed. And the reason is simple, because what's the value that you're creating for the organization? Yeah, attendance, record keeping, everything is now going to go digital and tech, including setting goals, which many of your organizations have already been doing virtually. And if anything, the pandemic has forced you to do that, especially large organizations. So what is left for you as HR to do? So this is a time for some deep soul searching in terms of where are you adding value and what's the kind of value that you are adding to business. For those of you who are owners and entrepreneurs here, quite honestly, I would just ask for you to separate yourself from your company. Because this is the time to ask, have you done well as an entrepreneur? Because your enterprise is independent of you. How well the enterprise has been resilient over the last 2 years and how well you recover is the true test of entrepreneurship. Yeah. So have you been an owner entrepreneur, or have you been a manager entrepreneur? This is the time, because if your business comes out of this with higher resilience, then you have truly been an owner entrepreneur. So I'd like for you to think about this, because this is the time for you to say, what is it that my business should do? How should it grow? Yeah. And what happens if I'm not there? How sustainable is my business? That is the question I would ask for entrepreneurs who are there in the session. Okay? So if there are any questions, so this has been the COVID context. I'm sure for some of you, it's been different. Factory shutdown, orders cancelled, supply chain disrupted, financial economic consequences fairly significant. All of this has come out of all the workshops that I've been doing over the last 1.5 years. Your industry, what is particularly is that women have been negatively affected by COVID. And therefore, it is also interesting to see that, at least when I look at the Bangalore cluster, several large part of the feedback that is coming is that women who are coming back into work, their drives and motivations are very different now from what they were 12 months or 24 months ago. And I don't know if any of you have done any studies on this, but this is the first sense that I am getting when I have spoken to women-intensive industries. Families have been through the crisis, so therefore a lot of employee values have changed. Okay. So yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was on a panel on this great attrition that everybody is talking about. And one of the speakers spoke about how people have become more money-minded. Of course, they will be. You tell me, if you had an immediate close family member in a hospital during the second wave, however you were, okay, if you could not pay what the hospital needed for that oxygen cylinder, for the rest of your life, you're going to wonder, if only I had that money, I could have saved that person. So what are you talking about? At the end of the day, every person who went through the pandemic as a citizen is also either your employee or a consumer. Okay. So in some ways, has the COVID changed? Yes, it has. Will it show up immediately in terms of behaviors? Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. And many times, I'm not even going to go here. All of these have their own implications on how people look at themselves, their worlds around them. So the person who left your factory in March 2020 is not the person who's come back to your factory in March 2021. And that's something to just keep in mind when you are looking at people management. So I am therefore calling HR for the next few years as rebooting. Yeah, not changing, transforming people. No. It's rebooting. And for industries like yours, and in the previous session, Chandan did a great job of explaining what's the nature of technology and its implications. I'm going to just take a few minutes to do a little bit of a detour to a study that I did in 2016 on looking at leadership in the age of digital disruption, where I looked at about 300 heads of small and medium enterprises, as well as entrepreneurs, and just kept asking them 3 questions. 2016 to 18, this was the work that I did. Little did I realize then that it was actually preparing me for the pandemic. I asked 3 questions. What all is changing in your environment? How are your organizations impacted by this change? And last, what sets of competencies do you think you need as leaders that you may or may not have to manage this transition? Number 1, in 2016, across sectors, digital technology was coming at a pace in which we did not understand. Our customers were embracing technology and were asking us to change, which we could not do as quickly. It was very evident that several of the new technologies were being customized for their sectors, and the new breed of technologies that were coming in, I could not learn from someone else and then see whether to incorporate it or not. I had to invest in those technologies as the technologies were evolving. And today, when I was listening to Chandan, I was so struck by the fact that 2016, 17, and 18, we were able to see it. But 2020, the pandemic just brought it to in front of our eyes. So it wasn't that it wasn't changing. It was just that the pandemic accelerated that change. Yeah. So in some ways, I think what all of us have to reflect on from a people perspective and HR perspective is that the contemporary practices that we have to look at is a hybrid practice. There are parts of the old that you have to keep. And there are parts of the old that you have to shed. I believe personally, this is a great time for OGTC member organizations to be a bit bold and to actually start looking fundamentally in terms of what you're doing on people. As I have looked at what's likely to happen in the post-COVID scenario, I've been asking myself, saying, what does it take to have a growth mindset to HR? Okay. And I've been just asking this question for several months now. Here are some tentative ideas that I have, not quite yet completely clear, but they are the first set of inkling of how entrepreneurs, senior leaders in organizations should be thinking about people. I broadly categorized, okay, so what are the key areas? And I'm going to nuance this a little bit because it builds on what Chandan said without going into the details, okay? So my mind, organizations of the future, particularly mid-sized transitioning to large organizations, they have very unique set of problems. And I think what I have seen in the apparel industry, there are a large number of you in the in the MSME, and in the mid, okay, what are some of those dramatic changes that can happen in mid-sized organizations, which take a little long to happen in very large organizations? Yeah. So if I were to look at that, one is the potential for the technology, for any technology that you take on, to deepen very quickly in your organization, unlike a large organization. So let's say if I have 100,000 people working for me, the rate at which the organization has to change is much, much slower compared to an organization that has 35,000 people. Okay? The rate and speed of change is quicker in a mid-sized organization compared to an organization that is about 100,000. It is relatively even quicker if you are a 10,000 person organization. Okay? So in some ways, the question is, there is an opportunity for many, many of you to re-examine fundamentally how you are structured on people. So the first part that I want to take maybe 5 to 7 minutes to talk about is, how should you look at jobs? I'm not going to talk of people. I don't care about the people. I really don't care, because when an organization starts and when I draw up a plan, there are only positions, there are only jobs. I bring people to fill the jobs afterwards. So right now, in the entire sector, there is a burning need in the current context to look at rethinking jobs, rethinking positions. Do you need so many positions that you have? How many of your positions are redundant? I'm not talking about people. I'm not talking about people. So please do not confuse this with people. I will come in talent planning to talk specifically about people. Okay. Then I will talk about talent management, and then I will talk about talent development. So first one, just how many jobs are there? And Chandan's slides on looking at how many jobs are there in the apparel industry and how many jobs are there within your organization. How many of those jobs have to exist in that format in which they've existed for 20 years? If there's a new technology that you're bringing in, especially some of the new age technologies that we are looking at, and that was being spoken of with cutting technologies or post manufacturing technologies, if there are some of them coming, do you really need so many people? And I'm going to give you a very small example on how to rethink. Okay. I was doing a study in an automotive industry where they were actually doing a automation process. When they were doing the automation process, what we found out was, thumb rule, single-skilled people were more vulnerable to automation than multi-skilled. So the first question I would ask is, if we know that from some other industry, and there is a lot of evidence, how many people in your organization are single-skilled people? How many of those single-skilled jobs have to actually become multi-skilled jobs? Not multi-skilled people right now. Okay. How many of those jobs have the potential to actually become multi-skilled, especially with an automation intervention. So you now begin to see, right, as you're thinking, I'm talking about jobs. I'm not talking about people. Do I need to pause for a while? Priyanka, are there some chat questions?
No, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay, because I thought it had stopped the recording, so I thought you had questions or something like that. No? Okay.
No.
Okay, so if there are some questions, do let me know. Please pause. Otherwise, I can give some 20 minutes at the end, 10, 15 minutes.
Sure, ma'am, sure.
Yeah. So what kind of technologies are we going to introduce? What changes in businesses processes are we thinking of? What automation are we going to bring in? What influence is the customer having on our R&D, design and manufacturing? If your customer expects you, if your customer's design system and your design systems are more and more aligned, and your customer is over and over being able to engage at every part of the design process, then what kind of people do you need there to manage that process? Yeah, they require very high customer interaction skills, not just design skills. Are your people, is there a pipeline of such? So which means the position of how they engage, that position itself has changed. Now we have to ask, do we have enough people to come to that position? Should we need it, right? So you now see that automation is going to alter your configuration of jobs. What new jobs will emerge? What new competencies will be required? What are critical jobs? Critical jobs, not critical people, critical jobs. If they stop, almost everything is gone. If they delay, then you're going to be impacted severely in terms of your profitability, efficiency, productivity, choose any metrics. Okay. Now, even bigger question will be, given the way hybrid technologies are evolving, will you have everybody permanent on your roles? Or will you have some permanent people, some short-term contract people, some freelancers, some consultants? What is coming out of the World Economic Forum data is that all organizations post-COVID will become multi-contractual in nature.
Sorry to interrupt you,
Yes.
ma'am. We have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, can I take it, please?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Mr. Prashant Agarwal, he is asking, present people are always in mind while planning how do you change the same?
Very good, very good. So one of the ways to do it is don't start from the people, start from your strategic investments that you're making. Okay, that's one way first to kind of get that separation in your head. So I would just ask this question, what kind of investments are we committing to in terms of machines and processes? Okay, that's the first one. The moment you come from there, you'll have to say, for this new technology that we are bringing in, what set of capabilities are needed when the manufacturer is actually showcasing for us a reference site. Okay, so I would, if you are a HR person, Prashant, Prashant, I would look at going to the other extreme of actually saying, what's the nature of technology and how do I engage with it? The other way to do it is to actually get a person from outside who can help you to begin this process of detaching person and people. I have found only these two methods work. Yeah. So both of these could actually help you to do a good job of the position itself. Yeah. I hope that helps, Prashant. If there are more questions, you can feed in and I will kind of come back on this. Okay. So enough to say whether you're a business leader in the industry or whether you're in HR, and that's why I positioned the presentation for any of you, or you are the head of a business or you are an entrepreneur yourself. I positioned this presentation relatively agnostically, okay? Because all of you have to end up doing this. So let me look at the next one, which is talent planning. You will see that subtle job planning, job-related planning, role planning, call it what you want, okay? Position planning, that's different from talent planning, which comes to people. One of the things that I have found in the work that I have done with, I can tell you large, mid-sized companies, okay? So one of the things I have found is that if you ask for what are the characteristics of our employees, how many are single-skilled, how many are multi-skilled, how many have done new jobs, how many of them have done job rotation, how many of them have moved across departments, very simple data. This is basic data to be able to answer one question, which is how much of my talent is agile innately. Okay, I moved them from this department to that department. They've been able to cope with it. My sense is that at least 50% of the organization is reasonably agile. But because we don't have data, we don't know whether they have an attitude to agility, which means if you put them in that job, will they actually be able to cope? Most of the time we are asking, oh, we told them to change, they are not changing. Of course, yeah, nobody wants to change on their own. You tell me, you and I can't acquire one small habit if you want to go and exercise at the gym. So what are we talking about others changing, right? So it's just difficult to change because we all have habits. But the important question is, has this person demonstrated the capability to change? Yeah. If the person has demonstrated, then you know that you can make it happen again. So to my mind, this data is so critical for entrepreneurs. I keep saying, this is your succession pipeline. This is your succession pipeline. Okay. And this is across all levels in the organization, I remember for a large manufacturing facility, I did an exercise of this kind maybe 7-8 years ago. And at that time, we had identified close to 1,800 workers with high potential. 1,800. And it's quite interesting that so many years later, right, they have a large cadre of those workers who joined, I think, sometime in 2012, who actually are mid-managers in their organizations. One-time large-scale exercise that they did to identify their characteristics of their people who can actually be moved, people who can be trained. Okay. Next set of questions. Clearly, multi-skill, single skill is the most important one. Single skill, automation just takes away. So where is your potential? So I can look at this question. I mean, when I teach HRM, I teach this saying, what are your employee-related risks? Okay, that's the session that I do when I do at the board level, asking what are your employee-related risks? And the number one employee-related risk is that I have, let's say, 1,500 people in a single skill process. What's the possibility that you're going to actually remove at least 1,300 of them? Very high. Okay, and this does not come from work just in manufacturing, but comes from across all other spheres. Okay, so now you understand why I keep harping on the single skill, multi-skill, because it poses reputational risk for the organization, poses legal risks for the organization of all kinds. Okay, so just it's such a critical one that we are looking at. How many are agile and able to? How many can be rotated in jobs because they have done it in the past? How many of our workers can actually aspire to grow into higher roles? We may not be able to, we don't know because we may not have actually moved them. Okay, I'm actually starting from workers, but please substitute for all of these questions with your managers. It really doesn't matter. Yeah. Who are critical talent? And I'm going to make a statement that most entrepreneurs don't like when I say this, which is your strength of your business, you're only as strong as your most critical talent. The day that person leaves, if you have somebody on your team who you say, my God, if this person goes, we are going to be in deep trouble, then I don't care whether you're an 1,800 crore organization or a 400 crore organization. You're as vulnerable as your most critical employee. So this critical talent is important because that's where succession planning has to begin first. De-risking the business. Okay. So if I'm thinking, I'm looking at how do I de-risk the most critical talent. Okay. Who are the people who are staying? I mean, this is something I think a lot more can be done in mid-sized companies. It's much easier to do it in a mid-sized company than a large company. I think too many people take it for granted. Oh, why do people leave us? People leave us for better salary. And what does your exit interview show? It shows that they left for better prospects. Okay, so we've all bought into this, whether it is HR, whether it is line managers, whether it is business. And we don't ask this question, why do people stay with us? Why do people stay with us? Yeah, we are always asking, why do people leave? As though if we found an answer to that, we will be able to fix and get them to stay. Okay, so my sense is some analytics without all this, now when I use the word analytics, I'm very scared because everybody says big data, machine learning, nothing. Just simple Excel sheet analysis. Who are the people who are staying? Who are the people you're losing? Who are you losing them to? Why do they leave you? Do people come back after they have left you? If they do, are they performing superior to what they did before they left when they were with you earlier? Okay, compared to how they were earlier. Important questions, okay, from a talent planning perspective, because it gives you a sense of the people in your organization. Okay, I will move to the third part, because in talent planning, is one subsection, and there is tons of material that is coming out from across India that our selection and recruitment systems could do with a lot more thinking than what we have done so far, especially if you're going to hire new talent in new areas. Is your recruitment process geared for identifying new age skills? Do you know where the labor market is for those skills? Where do people come from? Because remember, your existing network will give you only existing kind of people. If you want a new skill set, it has to come from a new network. An existing network cannot get you new skills. So, how many of your senior team members have their own extended networks for the new age skills? Where are you getting your talent from? If you want to change, alter, then there has to be a mix. So what is this mix and composition and that change? How is it happening? Interview processes are known to be very biased in small and medium organizations. I'm not too sure what your process is looking for. If in the way we see the new world order, the way things are changing, you want people who are fluent in digital communication, whether it is from writing an email, or to be able to read an Excel spreadsheet, or to be able to look at a design that has come and manipulate that design to be able to provide what feedback you want. You want to have people who actually can communicate on the mail effectively. Now that's a completely, your existing interview process is not going to give you that new age skill. So how then do I actually think about this in a deliberate manner? Are you tracking your HR processes? Increasingly, we find that we know the cost of a wrong hire. When we have hired a rotten tomato, we know the cost, but we don't know the cost of a right reject, that the person was the right person, and some new manager in my organization was sitting and interviewing, and the person did not have an understanding of my organization culture, and we actually rejected the right person. My hunch over the last few months, because I sit on several not-for-profit boards, and I've also got, I work with public sector banks, so I can tell you that the cost of a right reject is possibly much higher in India than the cost of a wrong hire. Yeah, so that's something to think about, especially for mid-sized organizations, because that's a cost we can't afford. We can't afford that. Yeah. Let me pause here. Priyanka, is there anything, any other questions? Anything at all?
No, ma'am. There's no questions yet.
Nothing?
No, ma'am.
I think people are just absorbing because there's just too much coming
Yeah.
at them, I think. Yeah, because they're just bombarding them with questions. So, yeah. So, this is the heart of it. Performance management, whatever way you have it, performance appraisal is a beast. What you measure gets managed. So, are you measuring the right things for a post-COVID world? If you're measuring efficiency, you'll get efficiency. If you're measuring productivity, you will get productivity. That is what has happened to all your organizations, because I know that you have been so successful as OGTC members. So, is that sufficient? Why am I asking this question? Because if we know that the future is not going to be an extrapolation of the past, are your measurements weeding out people who have these attributes? Is it making everybody think in one way? So where will managing new sets of customers, looking at online e-commerce, whatever you're looking at, whatever they may be, how are we going to get people to think there if what we are measuring is for doing more of the same? So I would think in a post-COVID world, and this just purely stems out of my own experience, both, I currently run a large team at IIM Bangalore. I have 35 people reporting into me. And I have begun to see that the behaviors that I am now got to observe over the last year are very different from the behaviors that I was rewarding them for 2 years ago. So this slide actually comes directly from my experience as manager, because the speed at which people can deliver in a virtual context, the ability to collaborate with other departments to be able to create something new to satisfy the customer, yeah, to be innovative and think beyond in terms of what can be done. In a place like academic institutions, this is becoming an important part. So I can imagine how much more important it should be for organizations like yours. Because what we are very good at is productivity and efficiency. And what we continue to track and measure across the organization is that. I'm not for a moment saying they are not important. All that I'm saying is, do you have the desired set of behaviors that people can demonstrate that will allow you to grow tomorrow and scale today? Okay? So that's the perspective that I'm coming from. Is your performance management system able to discriminate between high performers and high potential people? Because high potential is what promises you the future. High performance, so this is related to the previous question. High potential people innovate. High potential people do collaboration. High potential people are highly agile. High performers give you high productivity. They give you high efficiency. Yeah. So, and there will be an overlap of the both of them. Who really are your future leaders? Okay. So in some ways, you now understand why I'm saying performance measurement for your new world needs to include some of these dimensions. What kind of goals do your employees carry? Are they just carrying quantitative targets, or is there something more that they carry? Are they responsible for innovation? Are you putting into their goal sheet collaboration? More importantly, is learning and development a part of their goal sheet at all? Because otherwise, how are you going to do skilling? Who's doing skilling? If skilling is not a part of my goals, why would I want to skill? Yeah, there are some really important ways of looking at it when you're looking at long-term sustainability with people. Some more. How do I recognize people? Because not everything is reward. So how do I recognize people? Is there a way to do that effectively? My mind in the apparel industry today, and I've had lots of conversations with people, how do we do career planning? Even in large organizations, career planning is a little bit of a challenge, So people don't know where they are headed. So if somebody gives them a little bit of more money, they are just happy to go, right? Because anyway, I don't know where I'm headed. So some of these issues do not get fixed with money. Do people receive feedback on growth plans? And I expect that the next generation that is coming in, okay, whether it's my students or whether it is the young folks that I see, they are far more demanding on needing to know, because they're also far more mobile. Even, I mean, I remember some work that I was doing for a retail chain, and I was just so amazed when I was tracking. I mean, this is a great one study when I was looking at it, where we were studying sales professionals, okay, in the malls. This study was so fascinating for me. So I was asking them, what's their career growth trajectory, okay? And for those of you who may be familiar with Bangalore, because this was a Bangalore-based study, so the person turned around and said, first thing, I will join a local kirana shop. That is where all of us join, okay? From there, we will go to, at that point in time, 40 or 5 years ago when I did the study, Food World. They'll go to Food World. Then after Food World, where will you go? We will go into a mall. Where will you go into a mall? I will go into a superstore in a mall. Okay, so it could be a Food World or it could be an equivalent, Star Bazaar, more, whatever it could be, I will go into that. Okay, after that, where will you go? After that, I will go into a exclusive one brand shop. And the irony was, I was asking the organizations, how do they see careers for these employees? And very interesting, their definition of careers was internal to the organization. These employees' definition was what is their route to reach where they wanted to reach, whatever brand that is. Okay. So sometimes, and then, you know, when I fed back this information, the organization then started working on multiple store formats and where they could move, exactly same thinking, but they mapped it into their own organization. Okay. So some bit of innovation in terms of how do we look at careers and feedback. Last but not the least, how do we groom? Okay, people always tell me that, oh, professor, if you know, we are not like large companies, if we had millions, rubbish. You can be 100% organization, and I've seen some great examples. Do all your leaders teach? If your managers are not teaching, then how are they going to get competent? Because every time you teach, there's a new question that comes. What you know the moment you start sharing knowledge and you have to come to the class to teach that, you have to prepare, right? So you are continuously investing on yourself as you're training, okay? So that is why I said, no, this is not about investing. It's not about money. A lot of these things are really about how we approach it, okay? We have job rotation. Do we have special assignment? Do we have new opportunity identification? All of this can be done very easily with very little investments. The challenge in the future is going to be that employees are going to continuously require more and more information processing skills. They are going to continuously require new tools and methodologies for if they are looking at all of these technologies, new softwares that are going to come in. So there's a whole technical process of training that has to be updated. How do we go about doing that? Because it's not just behavioral, it's very significantly technical. Okay. What's the last slide that I want to leave? I have 5 minutes and then I will pause and take questions. So please start feeding your questions. Okay. As technology deepens, we see that the human capability also changes. Look at WhatsApp, right? The way we communicate today on WhatsApp, both business as well as personal, okay? Look at the amount of time we spend on WhatsApp. Clearly, every technology requires us to acquire new skills. When we do that, it also changes our behaviors. We are expected to respond more quickly on WhatsApp than mail. Okay. So today, if it's anything urgent, WhatsApp has become the medium. So it's altering our behaviors. So technology is influencing the way we think, the way we behave. If that is the case, then as managers, what are all the set of skills that we need? And how are we as an organization looking at some of these skills? Who teaches them? How does it get done? Okay. Finally, for those of you who are career managers in organizations and who are in this session, this slide is just to show you that in the organizations that you are in, how should you look at your own growth? Yeah, it's one thing right now I've been talking about what you should do as managers, but what do you do to yourself when you're looking at careers? Because unless you can create careers for yourself, where are you going to be able to create careers for others, right? So there are some models that are available. Very simple, it says that there are some transitions that people go through as careers in large organizations. I'm going to pick just 3 of them because of today's session for OGTC, which is really around looking at individual contributor, manager, and manager's manager. I'm going to just look at those 3, but I'll share the slide deck and I'm happy to do that. So if you look at it, right, why am I talking about this? Because development, career development is also the responsibility of the employee. It's not just the responsibility of the employer. Okay, so first premise in the changing COVID world will be that career development is a responsibility of an employee. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a small organization, a large organization, it really doesn't matter. In large organizations, it gets even more complex. So since many of you are in mid-sized organizations, it's relatively easy to actually be able to look at careers more systematically. Yeah. What does this mean? I'll just come back to this. Okay. When you look at, all of us have been individual contributors world over, and I've run this session in 26 countries, so I can tell you that absolutely these slides are global in that sense. When somebody is an individual contributor and they have nobody reporting to them, typically, it doesn't matter which part of the world you are assessed on planning, punctuality, quality of your work, content of your work, reliability. Are you able to support others? Can you work unsupervised? And wherever you can be self-managed, those are the people who get promoted, becoming managers. Now you realize that as a manager, when you're training others who are new managers, what are the areas that we should focus on? Are your existing managers training new managers systematically? Are we defining and assigning work for others? That's the first thing that any manager struggles with. Am I enabling my direct reports to do their work by monitoring, coaching, not going and micromanaging? Am I providing feedback? Simple. Am I collaborating with others in the organizations? So there are some skills that are needed: planning, selection, rewards, how to do appraisal, how to do budgets, how to prioritize. But interestingly, in medium organizations, if you are wanting to actually recognize people, you should ask, is this person getting results through others, or is the person taking credit of others? Okay, very important. Second one, does this person groom and enjoy the success of direct report, or is the person threatened by the direct report? Is this person walking the talk? If we are asking agility, we are asking collaboration. Is the person demonstrating that? Finally, is this person respected as a manager? I think these values, we don't measure them enough. We have it at the back of our heads. We use it when we want to give some recognition to people. But do we systematically think about these people and say, these are the people that I should retain deliberately? What am I doing to develop careers for them? So now you understand how this personal career management ties into organization talent planning. Okay, I'm just showing you the linkages because this person is the most attractive one for your competitor. This person is the most attractive one for your competitor. So you've done all the investments and somebody else is actually benefiting from them. This is the place where in the last 5 years, a large part of my work with organizations, small, medium, and large, all of them are running through. Manager's manager. And I did a study about 7-8 years ago with 10,000 goal sheets of a single organization. And And you won't believe it, the goal sheet of the manager, the goal sheet of the manager's manager, and the goal sheet of the functional head, you won't believe there is 70% overlap. So who is accountable for what? As a sales manager, my goal sheet cannot be an aggregation of my 20 sales team. Then what's the value I bring to the table? What is unique about me, right? So in many of your organizations, this will be the reality. If there is a 50 to 60% overlap in goals, we are in serious trouble because there are 3 people doing the same job. So in some ways, I go back to the previous session where we said, are we providing clarity to employees on what it is they're accountable for? So are you paying salaries to 3 people for 30% of the jobs that are overlapping? So it doesn't make sense, right? From a pure cost perspective. Okay. So what is the accountability of a manager's manager? Because managers are responsible to shape the culture of the organization. They are often functional heads in mid-sized companies. So what are you holding them accountable? Okay, and everybody can't be held accountable for profitability, right? And efficiency, because finally efficiency and productivity, believe between you and me, is not manager. Is really at that operator and the way production planning is scheduled, the way whatever, all of that, right? So other than the first line manager and the individual supervisors and the workers, everybody cannot have that as their goal sheet. So what is the goal sheet as you go from manager's manager and above? You can now begin to see, right? This post-COVID context gives you an opportunity to clarify these. And last but not the least, let me skip through all of this because I think I have just 10 minutes left. Simple last line. Where do people learn? So assuming that, forget about contemporary COVID, forget about all that. In your organization, if you have 100 people who are all good, very good, let's say, how are you going to develop them? Okay, this is easier to do. You just need to do it once a year. Just put this matrix. Where all do people learn? People learn when they start up something new. People learn when you give them an unstructured assignment and they have to go around figuring it out. People learn when you are challenging assignments where your customer is just killing and saying you're not going to be able to do it. We have to show them that we will do it. The people, where do they learn when they are in a crisis? Where do they learn when they have to turn around something that's not working? Okay, all of these we know are learning contexts. So whether you are a HR head, whether you are a business leader, whether you are an entrepreneur, 3 hours in a year is all it's going to take from you to be able to make sure that your employees who are valuable to you and critical to you have this on their sheet. Okay. And to HR, like I promised last slide, and I stop with this, that you can't ask an organization to be innovative if you are not innovative. This is possibly the best time for HR professionals because you can rewrite any book right now, given the context. Several policies have been dropped, several policies have been adapted, several policies have changed fundamentally forever. So please retrieve your common sense. Just ask fundamental questions. Why are we doing what we are doing? Continuously learn from other organizations what they are doing, but don't embrace best practice. Post-COVID is not a best practice context. It's the next practice context because everybody is learning. So please be a part of learning program forum. Please be a part of sharing program forum, but please don't embrace somebody else's best practice because that's not your next practice. Okay, let me pause here and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have some questions. Actually, one question. Mr. Dheeraj, he is asking, what should HR and mid-level professionals do if the promoters don't adopt employee-friendly policies despite good revenue?
Very good, very good. So I think what should HR do and what should middle managers do? Okay. So I think if you are a middle manager and you're kind of struggling with this, then I would use analytics. Okay, I've seen it being used, which is why I'm thinking. So if there are not employee friendly, see, first thing, no, as a middle manager, you have to learn is if your self-interest is at stake, your direct reportee is whom you are asking concession for. Okay, you will never get it. You will never get it. Okay, so in a way, you have to step back and ask, is this problem just with my direct report, or is this a problem across the organization? 99 out of 100 times, the moment you start looking around, you'll realize that the problem is not with just your direct report. This problem will be more pervasive. So my suggestion to you would be very simple. Is this an isolated problem of an employee unfriendly policy, or is it a prevalent one? Second one, very simple in change management. Who is your champion in the organization at 1 or 2 levels above you, who, if you actually went and spoke to, is likely to listen and go and influence the promoters? Okay, so that's the second thing that you need to do. The third thing that you need to do, if you have a reasonably good support with your HR, you can just go and have a conversation with them and say, boss, please check out whether this is true. Okay, as line managers, right, providing feedback as middle managers to management is important. And 99 out of 100 times, if there's no self-interest involved, you're not fighting for your direct reportee, you're not fighting for yourself, right? 99 out of 100 times, I found that people listen to you. It's only when you go fighting for yourself that they will say, you have self-interest, boss, don't come now. When everything was going and that all was happening, you did not come to fight. And now because it's your department, your team, you're coming to fight. So wherever there is self-interest, no, as a mid-manager, you cannot succeed. Okay. So my thing would be, look at it. If there is no self-interest, you have a much greater chance of pushing it through everybody compared to anyone else. I hope that helps, Dheeraj. If you're HR, more analytics, because I am now realizing that a large number of promoters just see, I think in many ways, no, the promoter focus also, and many of them have not been trained in some of these areas. Many entrepreneurs that I work with, right, they have never worked in a company. So they don't have that consciousness, okay? So it's not as if they are deliberately, there is obviously some data that they are using, which is cost-based data. Now, unless you use that cost-based data to be able to show a people-based perspective, they have no way of gaining another perspective. Yeah, it's much easier to say that they don't understand us than it is to be able to say, how do I actually influence them? Any other questions, Priyanka?
No, ma'am, thank you. We only had one question, and he's thanking you for answering the question.
Is that it? I mean, a little surprised because I thought there were several HR people there. So I would have expected a little more questions from them.
And your presentation was so wholesome that it already answered a lot of questions.
Okay.
You know, all through your presentation, I've been thinking that there is so much more that we don't realize. Also, we think that the job that we are doing for our staff, for our workers is fantastic, and we feel pride in that. But at the end of the day, there is such depth to the subject that after listening to you, I have been thinking all along that after being in the industry and in the practical business world for so many years, there is still so much to learn. And yes, especially in our industry, as I'm always saying, is that human resource is the most important factor, the most important. Any other factor comes, not even the near distance, you know.
Correct.
And if we can manage that, if we can groom that, if we can motivate that, the scales that we can touch are unimaginable.
Agreed.
And also the change due to the COVID, I think we would require so many more people for the industry, because the industry is going, the world is looking at us. Correct. Now it's up to us how we deliver. And the only way we can deliver is if we have a spirited, motivated workforce. And I think we'll keep on coming to you and taking your guidance and suggestions, and your vast knowledge would benefit us always.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Anil. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for making this session. Thank you for making this session a very good one. I would like to thank our session chairman, Mr. Anil Peshawari, and our eminent speaker, Ms. Vasanthi Srinivasan. You have definitely given us an insight on the existing and forthcoming challenges in the HR sector. So thank you so much. Now I would like all the attendees and our speakers as well as our chairman, session chairman, please log into the conference session. This is the conference wrap-up session that is just going to start in 2 minutes. Please head on to that.
Thanks, Priyank. Thank you. Thanks, Anilji.